he would soon abandon me for her, taking the brand new $40,000 recreational vehicle I'd just signed for, and ultimately our entire life savings, leaving my world in ashes. My brilliant 10-year-old son, Ethan, would become my unlikely hero in the fight to reclaim what was ours. It's a story of betrayal and resilience you truly won't want to miss. So if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to follow our journey here on the channel. But before all that chaos, before the full extent of his cruelty was revealed, there was just the promise of family adventures, a decision made with a heavy heart, and a life that seemed, on the surface, perfectly normal. My name is Amber, and at 35, I often found myself juggling the myriad responsibilities of a modern working mother, the primary breadwinner in our Californian household. I lived in a pleasant, sun-kissed city with my husband, Mark, who shared my age, and our exceptionally intelligent 10-year-old son, Ethan, whose perceptiveness often belied his years. While Mark possessed a certain charm and an optimistic outlook, his career path was a patchwork of short-lived ventures, leaving me as the unwavering financial anchor for our family. I diligently managed our budget, ensuring bills were paid and a sense of normalcy maintained, despite the underlying current of his employment instability. Recently, Mark had become particularly animated about the prospect of family road trips, painting idyllic scenes of exploring America's vast landscapes, camping under starry skies, and forging unforgettable memories together. He passionately advocated for purchasing a recreational vehicle, a gleaming $40,000 recreational vehicle that he presented as the key to unlocking these cherished experiences. Yearning for those quality family moments, and perhaps hoping this new venture might ground Mark, I found myself drawn to his vision. However, when financing arose, Mark's fluctuating job history and poor credit rating became a roadblock. The financial institutions were clear. He didn't qualify, and so, as was often the case, the burden fell solely upon me. With a mix of hope and a familiar sense of responsibility, I signed the loan papers, my signature binding me to the substantial recreational vehicle debt, a decision made for the promised joy of family adventures, even as a small caution whispered within. The day the recreational vehicle was scheduled for delivery, a day I had circled on the calendar with a mix of excitement and trepidation, started like any other. I was at work, deep in a project, when my phone buzzed with an unexpected message from Mark. It was not the cheerful update I had anticipated, perhaps a photo of our new adventure mobile parked proudly in the driveway. Instead, the words on the screen felt like a physical blow, each one colder than the last. He wrote, casually, that he would be taking the recreational vehicle, and since the loan was in my name, I would, of course, be handling the payments. My heart lurched. Confusion warred with rising dread. I immediately stepped out to call him, my hand trembling as I dialed. When he finally answered, his voice was calm, detached, as he delivered the devastating news. "Well, Amber," he began, "I have fallen in love with someone else, a woman named Tiffany. I have decided to start a new life with her." He went on, explaining that he intended to file the divorce papers we had in a moment of heated argument months ago, briefly discussed but never seriously pursued. Before I could fully process the implications, before I could even voice the torrent of questions and accusations swirling in my head, he abruptly ended the call. Just like that, Mark, my husband of over a decade, vanished, taking with him not only our dreams of family road trips, but also the gleaming new recreational vehicle, leaving me standing alone, a crushing $40,000 debt, now solely my burden. In the days and weeks that followed Mark's callous departure, I existed in a haze of disbelief and mounting despair. My frantic calls to his phone went straight to voicemail, his number eventually becoming disconnected. Emails I sent, pleading for an explanation, for him to at least consider the financial ruin he was inflicting, vanished into the digital ether, unanswered. My bright, perceptive Ethan, only 10, quickly noticed the profound change in me. "Mom, are you okay?" he would ask, his young eyes filled with a concern that broke my heart anew. I tried to shield him, offering weak smiles and assurances that I was just tired, but I knew he saw through my facade. The constant stress, the sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling, the gnawing anxiety about the looming recreational vehicle payments, and my shattered future began to take a severe toll on my physical health. I lost weight, my energy plummeted, and a persistent weariness settled deep within my bones. One afternoon at work, while trying to focus on a critical presentation, the room began to spin. A wave of nausea washed over me, and before I knew it, my legs buckled. I collapsed, the concerned voices of my colleagues fading as darkness enveloped me. I woke up in a sterile hospital room, the beeping of machines a jarring soundtrack to my new reality. Doctors spoke of stress-induced complications, a serious medical condition that required immediate surgery. A month passed in a blur of medical procedures and recovery, a period where I felt utterly broken. Finally discharged, weak but determined to rebuild, I faced another devastating blow. Checking our joint savings account, the $25,000 we had painstakingly accumulated over years, I found it virtually empty. Mark had systematically drained it, leaving me with nothing. Staring at the near-zero balance of what was once our emergency fund, a fresh wave of despair threatened to engulf me. It felt like Mark had not just abandoned us, but actively sought to destroy any semblance of security I had left. I slumped onto the sofa, the weight of it all pressing down, wondering how I could possibly climb out of this financial abyss while still recovering physically. It was then that Ethan, my incredible, wise beyond his years son, approached me. He placed a small hand on my arm, his expression serious but resolute. "Mom," he said, his voice surprisingly firm, "we need a plan. We need to get the recreational vehicle back." I looked at him, my heart aching at his premature maturity, but also a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks, a tiny spark of fight. "How, sweetie?" I whispered. "Your father is gone, and he has the recreational vehicle." That's when Ethan revealed his quiet brilliance. He reminded me of the kid-friendly smartphone we had bought him a few months prior, a purchase he had subtly nudged us towards, citing safety and easier communication. He then confessed that he had convinced Mark to install a GPS tracking application on it, ostensibly so we could always know Ethan was safe, but he had also ensured the app was linked to a family account, giving us access to its location. And then came the bigger revelation. While I was in the hospital, worried sick about me, Ethan had taken matters into his own hands. He had bravely gone to Mark's last known workplace, pieced together information about Tiffany, and even managed to find an address for her parents. My 10-year-old son had been quietly laying the groundwork for our fight back. A surge of adrenaline, mixed with a profound sense of awe at Ethan's resourcefulness, coursed through me. His quiet determination was a lifeline. "Okay, Ethan," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Let's make a plan." We sat together at the kitchen table, Ethan meticulously laying out the information he had gathered. He showed me how the GPS application on his phone, pinpointed Mark's current location, a small, blinking dot that represented both my betrayal and a potential path to reclaiming what was mine. Over the next few days, a new energy filled our home. We were a team. Ethan, with a composure that astounded me, took on the task of contacting Tiffany's parents. He explained our situation with a simple, heartbreaking honesty that I knew would be hard to dismiss, carefully arranging for them to be present at a specific public location near where the GPS indicated Mark and Tiffany were frequenting. He believed, and I agreed, that their presence could be a powerful deterrent, or, at the very least, add an unexpected layer of pressure. My role was more direct. With Ethan's evidence of Mark's location and the clear theft of an asset legally tied to me through the loan, I finally felt empowered to act officially. Taking a deep breath, I drove to the local police station, laying out the purchase documents, the loan agreement in my name, and Mark's callous message. I formally reported the $40,000 recreational vehicle stolen. It was a daunting step, making our private nightmare a public record, but it was necessary. Each action, each small step forward, chipped away at the helplessness that had consumed me, replaced by a burgeoning resolve, fueled by my extraordinary son. It was only a couple of days later, while Ethan and I were reviewing our meager finances, that my phone rang. The caller ID displayed Mark's new, unfamiliar number. My breath caught. When I answered, his voice was no longer calm and detached, but laced with an undeniable panic. "Amber, you have to help me!" he stammered. "The police are here, at this state park. They're questioning me about the recreational vehicle. They said someone reported it stolen. You have to tell them it's a misunderstanding." A grim satisfaction flickered within me, quickly suppressed. "Where are you, Mark?" I asked, my voice level. He gave me the name of a well-known state park, a popular spot for camping about an hour's drive away. "Stay there," I instructed. Ethan and I exchanged a determined look. This was it. We drove in tense silence, the GPS on Ethan's phone confirming Mark's location. Arriving at the park, we spotted the gleaming white recreational vehicle, and standing beside it, a flustered Mark being questioned by two uniformed officers. Tiffany was nowhere in sight. My heart pounded, but I focused on Ethan's calm beside me. We approached, and I addressed the officers. "Excuse me, officers," I said. "I'm Amber, Mark's wife. This is indeed the vehicle in question, and it is registered under my name. There are some family matters we need to discuss privately before this goes any further." They exchanged glances, but, seeing the situation's complexity, agreed to give us a few moments. Once they stepped back, I turned to Mark, my gaze unwavering. "The keys, Mark. Now." He hesitated, his eyes darting nervously, but seeing the resolve in my face, he reluctantly handed them over. The cool metal in my palm felt like the first small victory. Just as I pocketed the keys, the side door of the recreational vehicle swung open, and Tiffany emerged, looking disheveled, but with an air of bored defiance. She shot me a disdainful look. "So, you found us? Big deal," she drawled, leaning against the vehicle. Mark looked even more uncomfortable. "How did you even know where we were?" he muttered, more to himself than to me. I met his gaze. "Your son is a very smart boy, Mark." He made sure I always knew where my property was, I said, gesturing vaguely towards Ethan's phone, not needing to elaborate on the GPS. At that precise moment, as if cued by a stage director, an older couple, their faces etched with disapproval and concern, approached our little group. Tiffany's eyes widened in genuine shock. Mom? Dad? What are you doing here? She stammered, her composure finally cracking. Ethan gave me a subtle nod. His plan was unfolding perfectly. I turned my attention back to Tiffany, my voice clear and steady. You know, Tiffany, I began, Mark told me you were pregnant. He said that was why he left, to start a new life with you and his child. She smirked, regaining a sliver of her earlier arrogance. That's right. He loves me. I pressed on. He mentioned you were about 3 months along. Is that correct? She nodded, a triumphant glint in her eyes. And you two have only known each other for about 3 months since Mark met you at that conference, right? Mark, looking utterly bewildered, confirmed this. A heavy silence fell as the implication settled. I watched Tiffany's face. So, Tiffany, I said quietly, whose baby is it really? The color drained from her face. Under the furious gaze of her parents and Mark's dawning horror, she finally mumbled, It's not Mark's. The words hung in the air, and I saw Mark's entire world crumble. The fragile dam of civility, if it ever truly existed, burst. Mark turned on Tiffany, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. You lied to me! All this time you lied! He roared, his voice cracking. Tiffany, cornered and exposed, fired back with venom, their accusations and recriminations echoing through the otherwise peaceful state park. Ethan and I stepped back, allowing the ugly spectacle to unfold, while Tiffany's parents watched their daughter's meltdown with expressions of deep shame and anger. When their tirade showed no signs of abating, I signaled to the patient officers who had been observing from a distance. They approached, and I quickly updated them on the new developments, including the admitted deception and the fact that Mark had also emptied our joint savings account. The officers, now with a clearer picture of theft and conspiracy, informed Mark and Tiffany they were being taken into custody. Tiffany wailed, looking to her parents for intervention, but her father simply shook his head. You made your bed, Tiffany, he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. We're done. They turned and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences alone. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. With the evidence clear, both Mark and Tiffany were charged. Through my lawyer, I pursued the return of the $25,000 they had stolen. Eventually, a judgment was made, compelling them to repay the full amount. Furthermore, Mark was ordered to pay $600 a month in child support for Ethan, a sum that would be garnished directly from his wages at a new, albeit modest job I had, in a moment of complex pragmatism, helped him secure through an old contact, ensuring Ethan at least received what he was due. With the legal battles largely behind us, and the keys to the recreational vehicle firmly in my possession, my first priority was to rid myself of the albatross it represented. I listed it for sale immediately, and thankfully, given its nearly new condition, it sold relatively quickly, though not for the full purchase price. Still, the proceeds were enough to pay off the entirety of the crippling $40,000 loan, lifting an immense financial weight from my shoulders. It felt like shedding a heavy, suffocating cloak. As the external pressures eased, something remarkable began to happen internally. My health, which had suffered so profoundly, started to improve. The persistent exhaustion began to recede, replaced by a slowly returning vitality. The doctors were pleased with my recovery progress, attributing much of it to the reduction in stress. I found myself with a renewed energy, a focus I hadn't realized I'd lost until it began to return. I threw myself back into my career with a fresh determination, no longer just surviving, but actively seeking opportunities for growth and advancement. At home, Ethan, my rock through it all, stepped up even more, cheerfully helping with household chores without complaint, his maturity continuing to astound me. Our small apartment in California, once a place shadowed by betrayal and anxiety, began to feel like a true sanctuary again, filled with quiet understanding and mutual support. We were a team, mother and son, battered but not broken, looking forward with a cautious optimism to a future we would build together, stronger and more resilient than before. The road ahead wouldn't be without challenges, but we were facing it on our own terms, ready for whatever came next. Looking back on the whole nightmare Mark unleashed upon our lives, I can't help but draw some hard-earned lessons, the kind you only truly grasp after enduring utter misery. The power of intellect and composure, which Ethan, my young but extraordinary son, displayed so incredibly, was the guiding light when I thought I was lost in despair. There were moments I wanted to break down, to just give up, but it was that unwavering spirit, fueled by my love for Ethan, that kept me standing. We witnessed firsthand how truth, no matter how meticulously Mark and that mistress of his tried to bury it, would ultimately triumph, exposing all their deceptions. That sacred bond between a mother and son, that invisible yet unbreakable tie, became our most potent weapon and our deepest comfort. And a painful lesson learned the hard way. You always have to be cautious, to really see people for who they are in relationships, and especially when finances are involved, because blind trust can cost you dearly. My story has perhaps shown you the extraordinary hidden strength that lies within every person, something that only surfaces when faced with true adversity. What are your thoughts on how Ethan and I, as a team, navigated this brutal storm and reclaimed what was rightfully ours? If you found this story meaningful, if it resonated with you in some way, please consider sharing it. I'd genuinely love to hear your perspectives and your comments. And don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button so you don't miss out on more stories of resilience and the unyielding human spirit.